There we go.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our dementia and family dynamics. Great topic. So glad that you're joining us today. My name is Paige Fairbanks-Gunn, and I work for Kelsch Senior Communities. We have 40 properties through 8 states, and I am the regional relationship manager in the Arizona region. I've been in the business since 1997, and the goal today is for you to have information that you can take away, and please reach out to us. We are your resource. We are here to provide resources and any sort of, anything that you need as far as take away, and ask us, utilize us to ask questions. And the company I work for, Kelsch Communities, the majority of our communities are memory care properties. So we deal with all different levels of dementias. And we have independent living, of course, as well, but the majority of our communities are dementia. But we also offer respite care, and we also have day stay services as well. And then my co-host here, she is the founder of Alzheimer's Family Consulting. She is a certified senior advisor, certified dementia practitioner, and is certified in dementia care. She's also the author of the highly rated It's Not That Simple, Helping Families Navigate the Alzheimer's Journey, which is based on her 14-year dementia Alzheimer's caregiving journey with her parents. Please welcome Pam Ostrowski.
Thank you so much, Paige, and what a wonderful introduction to a very difficult topic.
Yes.
So this is a topic that is near and dear to Paige's and my heart. I work one-on-one with people just like you that are struggling with what conversations we need to have, being trusted, not being trusted, what care do you provide, meddling relatives who think that you don't know what you're doing, and all sorts of stuff that makes us really uncomfortable and stresses us out. Like being a dementia caregiver is not enough. Ray, we just need you to shut off your camera, please. Let's see if I can shut off her camera. One moment, please, guys. I wonder how I can do that. I don't think I can. There we go.
There we go. There we go.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so just so you guys know, we don't have authorization, so we don't like to have other people on the camera during the recording. All right, so let's get started. So Paige, you and I were talking about this because we both are hearing about family dynamics. I've dealt with clients with 4 sisters, and none of them were talking to each other. And the one sister said, we have to talk. We have to agree on this. And by the end of the call, all of them were chatting, and everybody was happy and everything. So having a third party as part of the conversation, whether it's someone like you with your experience or someone like me with mine, it makes a big difference in how this journey moves along. So what is your definition of family dynamics? I think it's important for us to make sure everybody is on the same page with where we're coming from.
Well, my definition of family dynamics is I would say it's a huge emotional circle. Relationships, emotions, conflicts, family dynamics, whether they're healthy, whether they're not healthy. How do you get to the positive place to make sure everyone is trying to agree on one goal? That's really what we want to try to unlayer today is the different family dynamics. And of course, there's more family dynamics when there's more involved, more children, more family members. And also it becomes very complicated at times when you have a lot of family members that are scattered all over, the United States, and not everybody's all under one area. And it can become challenging for sure.
Well, and you deal with family dynamics all the time. Every time you meet with a family, you're hearing, well, we need to go back and check with so-and-so, or we can't make a decision about memory care yet. And then, you have to ask the question, well, so what information is missing for you?
Right. And when I'm sitting down with families, sometimes we get family members where you have just, 2 children, and they come and, they're really in agreement, which is great. And then sometimes you get other family members where maybe there's 4 or 5 kids, or you've got a spouse and then 4 kids and they all come. And I really tend to sit them down and explain to them, you know, as much as I want you all here, sometimes it can be overwhelming. We want you all to be able to see and sit down and tour our community and let's talk about this. But we need to identify a driver. And what I mean by a driver is they need to have who is going to be that person that is going to be basically driving the conversations and will be the point of contact. Because as an operator, when I'm in our communities, it becomes very gray. And there's a lot of gray when it comes to dynamics, but we have to really identify who's going to be that point of contact person. Because otherwise, as an operator, we're trying to tell this person the same thing and that person. So we need a spokesperson and a driver for that family to be able to, you know, relay the information back to the rest of the family.
Yep, absolutely. 100. Yep, totally. And so one of the things that I would like to address up front is a lot of the family dynamics, bickering, disagreements, stress comes from the fact that the loved one never put their wishes in writing. So right. It's like, well, mom wouldn't want that. Yes, she would. No, she wouldn't. Yes, she would. I know her better than you do. And then the historical relationship shows up, accusations fling, you ruin the relationship, whatever's left of it. And we want to avoid all of that. So if you're sitting here and you have not written down and had someone witness your signature or go to a lawyer, an estate attorney, say, I just want to write down my, and this is not your healthcare power of attorney. It's called an advance directive, which is what your health wishes are, what to do with me when X, Y, and Z happen. And if you don't have an advance directive, when you hang up from this call, I want you to look it up. You can at least get a template off the internet and then look at what it is, go to a lawyer and get it signed and make it happen. Because you will be relieving so much stress from everyone and a lot of arguing and disagreeing if you have your wishes written down. And there's now a dementia advance directive available where once you're diagnosed, you know, where's your line on how you want to be treated? Like, you know, when I can no longer walk, like my mom lost her ability to walk, you know, I want to be in memory care, or when I'm in this situation, I need to be moved to memory care. It takes the guilt and the sadness and a lot of the things that weigh us all down. So it's really important to put this stuff in writing. Okay, what's our first question, Paige? Ray,
okay.
Be on the camera.
Oh, we'll get.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
All right. Okay. My sister and I have noticed my mom is struggling with some of her daily tasks and gets frustrated easily. My brother and dad don't see it. How do we get them to start talking about possibility of dementia and about care options and living arrangements when we disagree about living at home? Yeah, so that's a really stressful one. And by the way, if you're in this situation, it's extremely common. Paige and I live this almost every day. All the time. Yeah, exactly. Happens all the time. So first of all, the advance directive, putting things in writing is the number one piece of advice. But starting these conversations sooner is always smarter. So so before this situation happened, it was important to find out, you know, well, so what does later in life living look like for you guys? And inevitably, they're going to say, you know, I want to live at home. And the problem is, you know, what if you're not cognitively capable of taking care of the house and feeding yourself, making sure you eat well, exercising, all of those things? What if that happens? And, you know, it's just really important to be able to ensure that people are prepared, and that will help with these family dynamics. And then if she hasn't put anything in writing and the daily tasks, things are showing up, because that's early stage, really. And it's understandable that she gets frustrated, and she's not frustrated with you, she's frustrated with herself. So the longer, and Paige can tell you stories, the longer you wait to make these decisions and delay these conversations,
you're damaging her health. You're actually doing damage because she's not getting the care that she needs. And so we'll talk a bit more about conversations and how you start those conversations and when you start them and how long they are in another question later on in this webinar. So that is kind of my take on how do we, how do you get the conversation about living at home started? So Paige, what would you suggest?
Well, you're absolutely right. You're spot on with the last two. It's have your advanced directives written down, because that's a guide for you to follow, and it's their wish. So you're following out their wish. Number two, I'm always telling families, get your plan A, B, and C.
Perfect.
You have to have those in order, because everyone wants to stay at home. I want to stay at home. Pam wants to stay at home. We all want to live in our home. But is it realistic? Is it really safe to be at home? And if it's safe, do you have the proper care to come into the home? Absolutely, you can do that. But is it financially sustainable?
Right.
And most of the time, the answer is no. Just for those of you, just to let you know, if you do home care 24/7 around the clock, it's going to cost about $35,000 a month. And people just are jaw dropped at that, because they go, what? Medicare doesn't pay for this? No, it does not. So it's best to be prepared and have your plan for home care to look at mild home care, and then look at, assisted living communities. And if there is any dementia or any sort of suspicion of potential dementia coming in the future, please start looking at dementia support assisted living, because it is a very, very difficult journey for a family to try to navigate that, because it takes a village. It really does.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about 24/7 eyes on care and that type of thing. This is not a stroke or cancer, people. This is a person who is losing their ability to function as an individual. And so, it's the thing that I have found, and I have a client who's like this, and she's like, I can't talk with you on Zoom right now. It's too hard for her to vocalize the problem. So she says, I'm going to write you an email, and then you write back to me. And because it's written down in an email, and I highly advise, if you're having any difficult conversations, especially if it's on the phone where you can't see how the person's reacting, it's really important to put things in writing and be kind and be compassionate. Understand that other people have other opinions, and that it's really about, here's where I'm coming from, right? Because that's non-confrontational. And write down where you're coming from. This is my concern. I'm scared to death. This is going to happen. I fear that. Use vulnerable words to say what your real concerns are. And then when you send it to that person, in this case, I think it's the dad and the brother, that you will, what that does is it allows them to process the information in their own time and revisit it, and then reprocess it and think about it. If you're having a one-on-one conversation with someone, and we talk like this, right? So if you're having that kind of conversation with somebody, they feel rushed. And my dad was like this. He would feel rushed, and he'd say, you're talking too fast and you're saying too much. And it was, and it's too easy to do. It's too easy to make it about us. We'll talk more about that on the next question. So Paige, you ready for the next question? Okay, so my mom has dementia and I live in the same town as she does. My siblings live in other states. Boy, I've lived this one. How do I give them updates on mom's condition when they don't see her every day, which makes the situation a little bit less believable? How do I earn their trust in how I'm caring for her, how I'm taking care of her? So Paige, where would you start with this one?
This one happens often, because the one that's in town knows the most and sees the most. And I think it's best to make sure that you set up boundaries with the other siblings to make sure. I mean, it's not really necessary to give them the day-to-day struggles of what's going on. Your mom, they want to know that, is your loved one safe? Are they fed, clean? Are they being well cared for? Is there any, major concerns? And I think that communicating with them on a weekly or even a monthly update email, depending on the circumstances and depending on, what's going on with their loved one. But I think, you don't also want to overfeed them with information, because then they're starting to really think about, oh my gosh, well, what if this and what if that? And then that's just going to cause you, as the sole caregiver that's in town, more stress.
Totally,
What
totally.
about you, Pam? Yeah.
Well, and you covered a lot of excellent points. So again, I'm a writer by nature, and so was my dad. So exchanging, whether it's you write a letter and you bring it with you for them to read later. But it was a much easier way to process what was going on, because again, dementia is much more, in my opinion, stressful, because it's over years and years of time usually. And
yes,
it just wears you out. And the problem is when you're the sole caregiver because you're the one in town, and oh, by the way, the person who asked this question, I was right there with you. Now, I was fortunate in that my brothers never questioned what I was doing. They were very supportive. If dad kind of got all upset about mom's care, I would say, okay, he's called me 5 times and said the exact same thing. He had vascular dementia while mom had Alzheimer's. And I would say, please call him and talk to him. And all my brother would do is say, he would do it. He'd call my dad, and my dad just needed someone to listen to him. And I couldn't do that. It's like, if I can't fix it, I don't want to hear about it. And so, or if I've already fixed it, but he doesn't know it. So, or remember it. And so my brother would just sit on the phone with him and go, yeah, I get it, Dad. And I was like, I love you. He would do it for an hour. And I couldn't do it.
And so, how patient.
Yeah. He's a very patient person. But one of the biggest things about earning the trust side of things is that writing things down shows them what you're doing, not on a daily basis, but it's like, mom is, struggling with eating. So what we've done is we've started to give her finger foods like sandwiches and French fries and easy to eat finger vegetables like carrots and celery. And she seems to really like them. So put in personal notes so it doesn't feel clinical. But what you're doing is you're reassuring them that they're in the loop, right? Because that's a big fear, right? That they've been left out because they're not geographically located near her. And then you're also informing them that, hey, I got this, back off. So you want to make sure that they're not trying to care for her from afar. And if this gets confrontational, which it can, like you really should be doing this, which is the worst confrontational language you can use, is you should, you need to, all of those things, and they trigger us, is to say, if you want to help, and I would love you to help, how do you feel about moving? And if moving isn't an option, and a lot of times people are like, well, I can't do that, is to say, well, I'll tell you what, if we could bring in an in-home caregiver, 4 times a week for just a few hours, that would be really helpful. Do you think you could pay for that? And because some people have different levels of means, and so maybe they could do that because you can say, I sense that you want to help more, but from afar, that's really challenging. Am I right? So notice how I said that. It is not a challenge. It is not a trigger word. And then they may, who knows what they'll say in response. But then you can say, and if they're persistent and they're like, well, you're still not doing it right, then you can say, well, so what are you willing to sign up for to help out? I'm confused. I'm confused is actually a sales tactic, that you are watching behavior that is in conflict with what it is you're trying to achieve. So, or what that person has said to you. Oh, mom needs this care or whatever. And then you would say, well, I'm confused. I'm giving her that care. And yet you sound like you don't hear me. Can you tell me more about what I'm missing? Put it on yourself, and then it's not an attack, and you have a much better communication technique. Absolutely 100%. Okay.
And also family members, just to one little last thing. If some of the family members, if they're feeling left out, I love, Pam, that you said if they want to contribute and they want to help more, but if they're feeling left out in any way, Text messages with photos are great. And also if you want to include, your sibling or a family member that you want involved on a Zoom call during the care plan, the service plan meetings, so they can ask questions if they need to know a little bit more about what's going on with their loved one,
Yeah,
if you
that's a
allow
great
that.
idea. So Skip
So
has asked a question, and I know he has to leave soon. So let's get to his question. My mom is 87 and at the beginning stages, but hasn't been diagnosed yet. By the way, that could be normal aging. She lives with my stepdad and my autistic brother, who is 66. He totally doesn't understand what's going on. That's understandable. We're exploring a different living arrangement for him and an assisted one for my mom, an 80-year-old stepdad. Wise move. Exploring is really important. The sooner you do that, the better, because then you learn what communities you like and which ones you don't. You can get on a wait list. It'll be less expensive if you get into that assisted living community earlier than later. And you can be turned down if you wait too long. So nobody's ever mentioned that really to families, it seems. So it's like, yeah, if your loved one is not compatible with our community, we can turn you down. Not good. So question, how do I answer my brother when he says, is mom going to get better tomorrow? Ooh, very good question.
That's a
Hey,
very good, and he's
start?
autistic, so that's
Me to
tough.
start? Yeah. Do you want me to start or
You go ahead, Pam.
Okay. So, so this is a challenge because of his autism. That being said, so that might mean that you're going to have to repeat the answer multiple times, but maybe not. It depends on his level of autism. I know people who are almost savant-like and that are autistic. So being able to say that she's going to be, you could say she's going to vary how she feels and how she behaves. So we really don't know. Tomorrow she may be feeling better, but the next day maybe not. That's kind of how this works, because you don't want to crush him that he thinks she's never going to get better. There's no point in sharing that. But with this journey, like my mom would like rally, she'd have these rally sessions where she'd be doing really well. And I'd be like, okay, this is weird. But she did great. And then she would just sleep for a week. So it can get exhausting for them to rally and to have that energy. So just say that, you know what, some days mom's going to have good days and bad days, just like all of us. And that will help appease him, I think. And then just to follow up, Paige, and then I'll pass it to you. Skip says, thanks so much. She's had a few, bad falls and hasn't been the same since. Yeah. So falling isn't a good thing. But you got to get her where she has more eyes on care. There's never a guarantee that she's going to be prevented from falling no matter where she lives. All right. Because you can't catch a person. You can't predict a fall, but you can ensure that she's not walking without her walker or walking without a cane or without, being on someone's arm, which at Kelsch, that was what, people did. You'd see caregivers walking arm in arm with someone just to help them get to lunch or whatever. So Paige, what do you think? What advice do you have for Skip on how do you handle the question, is mom going to get better tomorrow?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. Is mom's going to have good days and bad days, and then when you decide to make the transition to an assisted living, that that this is just going to be a safer environment for her, and she's going to meet friends, and this is going to be a positive experience for her.
Right.
I'd really try to tend to lean on the positive side of things, and that this is for her safety.
Or for her to
suggestion.
have more fun, that she's probably lonely. She's going to go hang out with people who are more like her her comfort, right? And to explain why she would be moving into memory care would be the one I would use. Is she's going to go hang out with people that she can relate to and enjoy and do things together, and that bonding will feel better, I think, to your brother. All right, well, we have another one. Sharon, I have a sibling that lives out of state from my mom. My mom resided with my husband and I, you are a saint, for 1 year prior to being placed in memory care. I am the main contact person. Does that mean, can you answer, are you a healthcare power of attorney or durable power of attorney in that situation? Now that she's in memory care. My sibling doesn't call and rarely called her when in my care. How do I respect or consider his opinion when it comes to mom's care? Okay, power of attorney. Which one though? Healthcare or durable? Are you, because one's financial and one's medical decisions. So Paige, did you want to
Could
take
be
that one?
both.
Well, that's what I'm asking right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're not healthcare power of attorney. That's a challenge. So
that's a tough one.
Yeah, because you can't make medical decisions. Let's see. So it's just you. There's no spouse, because normally her spouse would be the one who would have first healthcare power of attorney by default. My sibling doesn't call. So go ahead, Paige. We'll go up with, I don't know what to do with the healthcare. She doesn't have healthcare power of attorney, but the question isn't about that. It's about how do I respect or consider his opinion when it comes to mom's care?
Well, and if he's being, if he's avoiding and not, he's detached, that's a challenge, because I mean, depending on, what he's requesting from you, again, I would say, listen, I would state, if you really want to help out and you want more information, I need you to be more involved. I need you to help.
I think you got to be careful with that one. Just
I
because
know.
my
it's a tough one.
It is. So my personal situation was my brother would call once in a while. My mom. So when you're in mid to late stages, and sometimes early stages too, this is such a variable disease and so unique to each individual that saying one thing could be not applied to your situation. But in general, the phone is their enemy. Calling is
100%.
It's like my mom would sit there while my brother was talking to her for like 30 minutes, and she just hold her hand out. She's like, I don't know who this is. I'm just going to hold on to the phone until Pam takes it away from me. So I would grab it and say, hey, Phil, stop talking. It's like, she's got to go to lunch, or she's got to go to the bathroom or whatever. And we would hang up. So him calling is not a bad, not calling him, not calling, is not a bad thing. And secondly, and Paige, tell me if you see this too, and guys, do not take this personally. You are unique in your situation, but most men don't do well dealing with a mother who has dementia. It's easier to detach and say, okay, I just want to remember her as she was. Both of my brothers were like that. They were just like, I don't want to see her where she can't talk and where she can't, toilet herself or shower herself. And I don't want to see her that she can't walk. I lived that alone for 5 years. And so, and that is, and I will tell you, I think, Sharon, that that's his prerogative. That is his choice. It has nothing to do with you. Unless he wants to tell you what to do, or he wants to be more involved in your mom's care, that's a different story. But if he's detached because he can't handle it, then he has to go get help.
Yeah.
That's not, you don't own that.
Exactly. That does. Okay. And sometimes you just kind of have to let it go when they detach and just know that it's not you, it's them. I mean, it's people deal with this disease process, condition, and the journey in a much different way. And it's very difficult for a lot of people. It's dealing with their emotions. And sometimes it's hard for people to have to deal with it. So they alienate.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
So Skip said, I was trying to help mom the other morning at 2 a.m. and she yelled at me and said, you can't boss me around. I'm your mother. That is the last thing they forget. They know that they are the adult and the mother. And you're right. Were you telling her what to do? Would you want to be told what to do? Probably not. So don't tell her what to do. You have to make it about you. So depending on what you were trying to do, helping her, it's like, you know what, mom, let's sit on the toilet for a bit and see what we can do. Now, bear in mind that if she was in memory care, they would take care of all of this for you. Just saying.
Yes.
And so you can't take it personally. Well, you probably did, but she's upset with you bossing her around. That has to do with tone and word choice. And that's specifically what I work with one-on-one with my clients is, okay, you just told somebody what to do. And you wouldn't like it if they told she's not gone. She just struggled. The part of her brain that's affected is tasks and short-term memory, but she's still in there. And don't be surprised if she, a lot of individuals get upset and they'll bat you away. Now they're not going to hit you like hit, but they can bat you away to say, leave me alone. I'm your mother. So that's really important to keep in mind. Okay.
This is also too, that is, she's losing her ability to function daily.
And it's frustrating.
And it's frustrating. And that's the one thing she still has control over.
I'm your mother. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know it's heartbreaking, Skip. I understand. It's difficult, but
it's hard. It's hard to let it roll off, but it's really not you. You're not doing anything wrong. It's the part that is unfortunate, that the ones that they love and that they care the most about and they're the closest to and they love the most, unfortunately get the worst of it sometimes.
Yes. Well, you're there all the time too.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it does take two people to argue. I love that, Skip. And but it's also about keeping for them in particular, calm, not do this, do that, or mom, let me help you. She doesn't want your help, but instead to say, let's do this together if you possibly can. That's, let's that and blame the walker or blame whatever the situation, the tools that are around you as the issue, not her. And that should help, but it's a tough situation. Okay, Paige, let's go to a question. I think we're on 4.
We're 4. Yep. Okay. All right. My family is.
Sorry, just a minute. Thank you so much, Sharon and Skip, for participating in the chat. You guys, please put your questions in the chat if you have any things that you'd like to deal with, or you can reach out to us privately if you would prefer.
Absolutely. Okay, we love it when you put the questions in the chat. So
we do.
We do. We love the chat questions. Okay. So next question. My family isn't very good at communicating. We also tend to be pretty emotional. What skills can I develop to help facilitate better communications as our parents reach their later years? Are there good times to have difficult emotional conversations, such as when we're together for the holidays or birthdays? I love this question.
Yeah, and you have a lot of thoughts about it too.
Oh yeah.
So I can't wait to hear them. First of all, and it's funny how it's easy to fall into did you notice that mom wasn't using her fork while eating? And, those types of things. Brenda, we're not using cameras. Thank you. It's easy to say, hey, we're all together. Why don't we talk about this? No, family celebrations generate memories. And you don't want to taint a memory with a conversation that's going to be fairly unpleasant or difficult or challenging or whatever it might be. So set aside a specific time for the family to chat. One really important thing, because I had a story last week about it backfiring. So the family decided, okay, this is what's going to happen with mom. And then a sister called mom or called dad and said, well, I was thinking about what we talked about last week and I was thinking X. So then the dad talks to the other sibling and the person I was talking to and says, oh yeah, Susie was mentioning that, maybe we should do this instead. And she's like, why was Susie talking to you about this? So the important thing here is when you have conversations, you've got to get everybody on board. Everybody has to be part of this, because if you don't, you create rivalry. You create, well, we agreed that this was what was going to happen, and now you've put a wrench in the works. So it's really important to make sure that everyone is involved, and everyone who wants to be involved is involved, right? Because you got to keep that in mind too. Sorry, I get excited. So bear in mind, this is an emotionally charged conversation, and there's going to be more than one, right? You're not just going to have one conversation and put everything to bed. This is going to take, and you're going to continue to have conversations over the years. And so it's really important that you preserve these relationships at the early stages so that you still have them when this person is further on down the line. And so it's really important to recognize, and I mentioned this earlier, recognize that people are really emotional. People have their opinions. And if it's not in writing, how many times am I going to say that, guys? If it's not in writing, then now we have to discuss, what do we do? And right. If that's the case, you need to respect everyone's opinions and everyone's desires to be either involved or not involved, and let them be them. Yep. Paige, what do you think?
Well, this can go all sorts of different ways. If it's large families, of course, like Pam said, the worst thing to do is to do an intervention. Don't ever do that unless there's a crisis and you're in crisis mode. And sometimes that happens because these conversations haven't been happening over the years or over several months. And you don't want to do that, because then you're in a crisis, and then you have to make decisions that you may necessarily don't want to do, but you're forced to. So my suggestion is, and I've said this to several families, is kind of pick that person that is the closest one to your parent, and maybe go out to lunch and talk to her, or mom or dad, or and just start talking about maybe, and it's okay to have a therapeutic fib. Therapeutic fibs are okay. There's going to be someone probably in your life that you're dealing with that had a friend that's dealing with her mom or dad, and just talk about, what, talk about your girlfriend and her parents, and some things are happening with them, and she's really worried about them, and talking about other people's situations, not necessarily your parents' situations or your spouse, but talking about other people's situations and what they're going through, and maybe some things that the friend is worried about the safety, and I just don't know what they're going to do, and they're looking at some options, and gosh, what would happen if we need to start maybe looking at that, what happened, what if that happened to you, mom, if you fell and broke a hip, and where do we go next? We just want to make sure that we have you in the most safe place possible. And what do we kind of start those conversations without having to say, you need to? It's getting them involved in the why, and talking to them about, what if, I want to know how to best care for you, mom. I want to know how to best care for you, dad. So please get their input. They're going to respect a lot more when you allow them to bring in their input.
Well,
and it's not always going to go well. Let me tell you, not everybody's going to go for that. There's some people that are like, not happening. So you just nudge a little bit each time.
Well, and the thing that you just pointed out is, it's their lives.
It is their lives.
We as caregivers tend to want to usurp that as them being not capable of making the decision on their own. So here, let me help you. And I will tell you, we have a question coming up that was a challenge for me as well. And one of the things that is important is they should do all the talking. If you can figure out a way to ask questions and have them talk, like, I was in this situation. What are you? Tell me more. Tell me about what you're thinking. How do you see this going down? How is this going to work out? And those questions, good luck, Skip.
Skip.
What is it that you would like to envision? So ask questions. Number one thing, always ask questions, because that gets them to talk, and they feel heard. All of us
validate.
We all want to feel heard. And one other thing, so in the vernacular of dementia and people doing things, healthcare professionals talking about dementia, there's a lot of caregivers will say, well, I don't want to lie to my parents. And then Paige just used the term therapeutic fib. And I call them compassionate stories, because the bottom line here is we're not lying, and a fib is a lie. We're not lying. We're trying to reposition the truth so that this individual will make a decision that's for their best interests. And so it is all about being compassionate. And compassion means that you will need to tell stories or have a conversation that may not be reflective of the truth and reality versus the truth and reality they know. And we have to remember that. They're still in there. They're still an adult. They're still probably your parent, if we're talking about parents versus spouses, and they know that. So we need to respect that. And that's so important. All right, Paige, I have a question for you. Okay. Number 5, my mom was just diagnosed with dementia. Culturally, the children in our family are expected to take care of their parents in their homes. That doesn't work for me, as we have our own children and our own lives. My other siblings may consider it. My dad is assuming we'll take care of them. Of course he is. I've reached out to in-home care and some communities and wanted to share what I've learned, but Dad doesn't want to hear it. Our family is very private, and talking about care and money has not been well received. How do we all get on the same page? I love this question.
Yes. Well,
lots to unpack.
Lots. I mean, the best course of action is to always reach out to your care professionals, and reaching out to professional sources, the care experts, and learn how these conversations to get the support you need. Pam, I know you've talked about some nightmares sometimes. I mean, I know we all go to Reddit and Facebook. They provide advice for other people's problems, but not yours, because you can go down a rabbit hole with Facebook groups and Reddit. But my biggest thing with this too is I'm a big proponent and supporter of memory cafes. If you can get into a support group, you can get around people that are in your like situations, and really just go in and listen to their stories of what's going on, and how to really be able to move forward with those conversations, and learn some of the tools that some of these caregivers do. I mean, I go to some of these memory cafes and that I facilitate, and I mean, they're the experts. I mean, they've been coming for a long time, and they've got really good advice. So I highly recommend support groups, and of course, the professionals and experts. Pam?
That's really good. So I want to respond to
have a question,
Sharon. Well, yeah. So I'm going to put this in the chat so it gets recorded. So Sharon mentioned, what are some ways to handle mom when she calls family members screaming and crying, wanting to leave the facility? So the challenge, the first question I have is, why does she have a phone when she's in memory care?
Yeah.
Okay. You can give her a phone, but it shouldn't work except to call you. Yeah. So Paige, I'm going to hand this one to you because you live this.
Yeah, I do.
It's a common thing, Sharon. Yeah. It's not unusual. So
this one's a tough one. So to me, it sounds like maybe she's recently been put into, or been admitted and moved into an assisted living with dementia support. But the phone is a challenge, depending on their level and within their journey through their condition, depending on, are they able to still manage the phone? They are. It causes a lot of stress for a lot of residents. So we tend to, if it's an absolute must, we'll start with the phone, and then we'll try to, implement it and try to get them involved in activities. Keeping them busy is key, and keeping them engaged in the activities program, and learning, to be with the staff, and getting friendships involved in the community is key, because the phone is overwhelming and it's stressful. And that just opens up a big can of worms for them to try to navigate the phone, especially if it's a smartphone. That is not good, and it's not safe, because you've got all these scams that are out there, that there's text messages, links you could click. I mean, there's so much. The phone can be a dangerous thing for someone with dementia, because it's a vulnerable population, and there's so much out there. So yeah, what we typically do with families is if the phone is not absolutely necessary, but they've been used to it, I say, let's start without the phone. Start without the phone, and we're going to schedule phone calls of when you are going to call. And then we know that you're calling. Don't call between meal times, but you're going to call between this time and that time. And we just come down, and we've got mobile phones, and we bring it down to you. Or a staff member gets on their iPhone and they can call right there. And then we're managing that device, because that device is so overwhelming. I mean, it's overwhelming for me with all the updates with a smartphone. I'm like, my gosh, I'd sometimes like to go back to a flip phone.
Yeah.
So, well, and
Sharon mentions it's a memory phone for seniors. I don't know what that means, but a flip phone is actually a reasonable tool because they can't, it doesn't help them make inappropriate phone calls. But here's the catch.
Yeah.
When does somebody make a phone call? When you're sad, depressed, you're angry, you're in your worst mindset, and you're going to call family. So your sister, so this is my opinion, I would recommend taking the phone away and doing exactly what Paige said. And the community should help you, and you can talk to the executive director if you don't get the right response from, you don't want to ask a caregiver, that's not their responsibility. But
no, but if you have a director of nursing or the leadership team, but
yes, anyone in the leadership team should be able to coordinate phone calls. But she should not, this is not going to work well. First of all, the family member can't do anything. The person she's calling can't do anything, can't solve the problem. So what she wants to do is leave the community because something's not going her way, or she has a urinary tract infection, or someone was mean to her and took her stuffed animal. There's so many scenarios that trigger emotions, that there's such an emotion. This is such an emotional disease. And so by the phone is just one more thing. And so you could taking away the phone, that's another conversation, but you can take away the phone or just disconnect it so it doesn't work. Yep. And then you can say, and then she's going to say it doesn't work. Right. And if she's relatively, it sounds like she's fairly cognitively capable. And you can say, oh my gosh, it's broken. Let me take it to the store and see if I can get it fixed. Now, with any luck, she forgets that there was a phone. But that's when the community would step in and start doing the scheduled phone calls. And that helps manage, because you've got to tell your sister, look, by doing this, we're working her up. We're making it difficult for the caregivers to take care of her. She's going to be more resistant when they find out that she's been crying or screaming. She's disrupting other residents, which could get her kicked out. There's a lot of reasons why you should never have a phone when they're in memory care.
It's hard. And two, if she's calling all the other family members, then they're going to turn around and call you. Yeah. And then you're managing all these emotions that are going on. When the phone becomes a problem, it's like, I think I've got 2 residents in one of our communities, in our high function community that has phones. But it's we really recommend not, because managing those phone calls with staff, it's a much better outcome for them, less stress and less anxiety. And it's better for you as family members. And let us as operators handle that.
So Paige, one of the parts of that question was about cultural differences in making a decision to move to either assisted living or assisted living with memory support, and also how they're the private family. How do you handle those situations where someone says, well, the expectation is we're going to take care of her at home? And culturally, that's what's driving the decision.
It's a balancing act with cultural expectations, for sure. It's a difficult conversation, but again, this happens to people of all cultures. And I'm always telling people, yes, you want to wait till the very end until you have to do something. I have a girlfriend that's, she's Korean. And I said, what's going to happen when mom might need care? She said, oh no, we're taking care of her. And I said, absolutely, you will. And they're going to try to do it as long as they can. But I said, you need to make sure that you have your plan B in place, because it can really disrupt the whole family unit, and it puts a lot of stress on the caregiver. And especially if the caregiver is still working and they're jeopardizing their career or their job, and then the employer is looking at, why is they always calling? I mean, there's all sorts of different scenarios, but oftentimes home is not always, and we're not, as family members, we're not always the best caregivers we think we are.
You're not skilled for this disease.
We're not. Most people, if you're not in the industry and you haven't done it, we think we're the best, but we're really not. And it's very difficult, but I suggest it's always get a plan B. Always have it in your back pocket, because you don't want to be left in that crisis mode and you're running around going, oh my gosh, because then what happens is it is crisis mode, and now you've been forced to make a decision. And the decision may not be the best one that you wanted to or hoped for because there's maybe limited availability. There's all sorts of different things and
Cost
money
more. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
cost. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You have to be
So
prepared. This is one
have to
disease
be
where
prepared. You have to be
if you,
be prepared for the what if.
right, right. And the bottom line is with dementia, as it progresses, and even if you're a nurse, I have a friend whose sister is a nurse and her mom was living with her. She doesn't have this dementia skills. She doesn't know how to communicate. She argues with her mother daily
Oh
about
no,
things. And it's like,
no.
look, you don't have the skills to do this. I don't care what your medical training is. This isn't about medical training. It's about emotional
Yes.
conversations. It's about being able to handle and get them to do the things that they need to do to take care of themselves. And there's lots of techniques for that. That's what I teach. And unfortunately, and Sharon, I'm going to pick on your sister. We do things that are to the detriment of our loved one, thinking that they're cognitively capable enough or that this is going to be a good thing when in effect it's not.
Right.
So you've got to talk with people who live this daily, like Paige and me, because if you don't, you're going to exacerbate the issue, and they're going to be irritated and upset and angry, and the facility or the community is not going to be happy, and you just create a lot of unnecessary angst, pain, and relationship issues. So we're trying to avoid them.
Right.
All right, we've got one more question, I think, and let me see. Okay, let's do number
Number
6.
6. Okay. All right. We've been on a dementia journey with my mom for 2 years. I think it's time we moved her to assisted living with memory care support. My dad says his responsibility and she'll never go to a home, as he puts it. How do my siblings and I handle dad's strong personality?
So my father is a retired lieutenant colonel. So you want to talk about a strong personality? Everybody, he would bark and everybody would fall in line. So yeah, except that I also have a strong personality. We were at loggerheads more often than not, but we loved each other and we knew that we were both trying to look out for mom. So first of all, the conversation around, he feels like she's his responsibility. And dad once said to me, you just don't understand. This wasn't supposed to happen. And so they are mourning the loss of a spouse while the spouse is still there, just like all of us do when our loved one with dementia starts to change and evolve in their personality. And so, you may have to sit back and wait and see how he does. Now, Paige and I both know someone who the husband kept the wife at home and she didn't want to eat anything, but I think it was watermelon and Jello. And she lost so much weight that her condition worsened rapidly. And he's like, I can't do this anymore. So he brings her to the community. And the daughter was my client. And the daughter says, Mom doesn't recognize me. And I don't think she's ever going to be able to say, I love you anymore. She's just catastrophizing the situation. And I said, let's get her back to her normal weight. Let's get her hydrated. This is going to take about 8 weeks. And then we can start talking about how your mom is doing. I said, she's been malnourished for a long time because your dad couldn't let go.
Yeah.
And so we need to get better at explaining to the parent, the spouse, the father in most of the cases, to say, look, here's a bad story. And if you keep holding on to mom and we don't get her the proper care, that qualifies as abuse. And that's not too severe of a thing to say, because in my opinion, this person was abused by not getting the proper care. So happy ending to the story. 8 weeks later, she's gained 20 pounds. She's eating properly and being active. And the daughter called and she was crying. And I said, oh my gosh, what happened? And she said, Mom said my name and said, I love you today. And I said, I felt like saying, I told you so, but that's not right. So, so I said, I'm so happy it worked out. Nourishment and stimulation in a care community is the number one cure for someone who is really, really, really struggling. So that would be my advice. Paige, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, when you're dealing with very stubborn spouses, depending on my relationship or how much I've worked with them at some point, I've had some very, very stubborn men spouses, and it's, I've had to really have the hard conversations and some of the truth serum to say, you are not being the best caregiver for her. Unfortunately, you love her and you're trying to do the best you can, but you're going to go down in the meantime because you're working so hard to try to care for her, and no one's equipped for this except for the experts. So, let's look at an option, of coming in for respite care and see how she does. She's getting the socialization. I have a couple that I'm working with right now that she is so bored at home, and the husband is just doing his thing and can't get things done, and she's just so bored. And he's like, oh my gosh, I got to entertain her all day. And I said, they need that stimulation. But it's also, I look at their side of it, and you have to always have empathy for what they're going through, because it is so hard for spouses when they move their loved one in, because the well spouse is grieving because their life has completely changed.
They don't know who they are.
They don't know who they are. They've been caring for their loved one 100% of the time for who knows how long. And now their life is it's lonely.
Yeah.
So they're battling the fear of loneliness. And what does that look like? I'm not going to have my little lady that I take care of every day. I'm not going to have my loved one I've had for 62 years. So it's really trying to identify, how are you going to really plan for that? And depending on the situation, I'll recommend, if it's spouses, especially spouses, is look for a community that has assisted living and memory care. Because then, the dad who's independent and stubborn, if you can get him in into an assisted living, and he can be independent. We're just caring for him, and we're serving him and meals and housekeeping, and then he can go down and see his wife, and still be independent, and they're under the same roof. So that would be,
that's what we did.
That's
what we did. Dad wanted to be near mom. And so he was independent and she was assisted. Then she went into memory care, and he moved into the 2-bedroom apartment with her, and he became assisted for medication management. And so they just kind of, until she got bad enough that she had to move to same community, but a different building, because they had Hoyer lifts and all sorts of tools and more caregivers per person. So that broke his heart, because now they couldn't sleep in the same bed together. So it is heartbreaking and difficult and challenging, but it's important to help them realize, look, this isn't going to get better. And do we need to wait until something really bad happens? I had someone who walked out the door, and I said, and ended up 3 blocks down. And I asked the person, I said, so you took responsibility for having your mom live with you, but you didn't put locks on the top of the door, so that even though she unlocked where the doorknob is, she couldn't get out because of the lock at the top. She's like, I never even thought of that. And I'm like, she has dementia. And people, some aren't, disposed to wandering, but only takes once, and then you're never forgiving yourself. So let's avoid the catastrophes and work through this. All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour, and that was really fun. And we still have like 3 questions more to do. So you guys reply back to some of the reminder emails and let us know if you would like us to do more of this, more of these types of questions on this topic of family dynamics, and send us what your challenges are, right?
Yep. We'll be meeting the last Tuesday of the month.
March 25th is our next one.
March 25th will be our next one. So thank you all for joining us. Have a lovely evening, and stay strong.
Reach out
You're
to
wonderful
us.
Caregiver heroes.
That's right. You are. And you every day you're doing the best you can. Don't berate yourself if you feel like you haven't done the right thing, but we make decisions every moment of our lives. you can pivot, you can change, you can make new decisions. So caregiver heroes. I love that. So you can reach out to me, reply back to any of the emails. Pam, and it's not that simple.com. Paige is pfg@calsenior.com, and or give her a call. Her phone number's in the chat. And we're here for you guys. We're here to answer any questions you have. So thank you all for participating. We appreciate
you.
And let us know if you need anything. Okay. Thanks so much.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Pam.